Hello and welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's chapters are Amos chapter 5 and 6. Now, remember, Amos is a collection of poems, of sermons, of sayings of the prophet who had trekked up north. He had gone to the northern kingdom where, they were living idolatrously, and he had basically said to them, as we saw yesterday, God had chosen you to be his people. He had given you a call, and so because of the call, because of the choosing of God, God says, I can't let you behave like this. He's referring to Genesis chapter 12 and says there's going to be consequence for your idolatry. Anyway, there are three main issues that he covers in chapter 5 and 6. The first one is he exposes the hypocrisy of the wicked and the wealthy. He basically says you do your religious acts, but you neglect the poor and justice. So he says in verse 11, you levy a straw tax on the poor and impose tax on their grain. Therefore, though you have built stone mansions, you will not live in them. He says, in fact, all your worship, all your sacrifices, all your ceremonies, he says, I hate them. He says in verse 21, I despise your religious festivals, your assemblies. They are stench to me. Verse 23, he says, away with the noise of your songs, I will not listen to the music of your harps. He says, don't come with your religious games if you're treating the poor that badly. Now, the second big issue he covers is housed in two words. He says, there are those who turn justice into bitterness and cast righteousness to the ground. So these two words, righteousness, tzedekah is the Hebrew word for that, refers to a standard of equitable relationships between people. So in other words, you're treating everybody the same. Now, mizpah, the word for justice in Hebrew, is the concrete action taken to right those relationships and right the equity between people. So he says, you must let justice roll on like a river and righteousness like a never-failing stream. Now, I'm down here in a botanical garden. You can see this river running through. It just lightens up the whole area, doesn't it? I mean, we're in the middle of a city, but this river is changing the landscape. And he says, your justice and your righteousness must be like a river that's flowing out from you. And then the final theme, he says, is that of idolatry. Remember, this northern kingdom had broken away. They built 2 temples there and put golden calves in those temples. And since then, the kings had accumulated all sorts of other idols, the idols of sex, of weather, of war, and the people were prostituting themselves with these idols. And he's basically saying, these idols are going to result in injustice. They're going to result in mistreatment of the poor. He says in verse 4 of that chapter, seek me that you may live. If you seek me, there'll be righteousness. If you seek me, there'll be justice. And then he says, listen, because you're going after these other gods, the great day of the Lord is coming. And that's basically how these 2 chapters end, the day of the Lord.